In just 73 seconds, Adam Schiff dismantled everything Pam Bondi thought she knew about political survival. The California congressman didn't raise his voice. He didn't grandstand. He simply opened a classified folder and watched as Trump's nominee for Attorney General realized her past had finally caught up with her. Cameras captured the exact moment. Bondi's face went from confident to terrified. The Senate chamber fell silent. What did Schiff reveal that made one of America's most seasoned prosecutors literally run from the room? It was 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday when Pam Bondi entered the Russell Senate office building, believing she was about to cruise through the final day of her confirmation hearings. She'd survived 3 days of mostly friendly Republican questions and predictable Democratic attacks. Her legal team had prepped her for every possible angle of attack: campaign finance questions, her Florida record, even her relationship with Trump. But they hadn't prepared her for what Adam Schiff was carrying in that black leather portfolio marked classified, eyes only, in red letters that seemed to pulse under the fluorescent lights. Schiff sat in the back row of the Senate Judiciary Committee, having been granted special questioning privileges as the former House Intelligence Committee chairman. His presence alone had made Bondi nervous, but her advisors assured her he was just there for show. Schiff loves the cameras, her chief of staff had said that morning. Let him grandstand for 5 minutes, then we're home free. But as Schiff adjusted his reading glasses and opened that portfolio with surgical precision, something in his demeanor suggested this wouldn't be typical political theater. The room buzzed with the usual pre-session chatter: senators reviewing notes, staff members whispering last-minute updates, reporters checking their recording equipment. But Schiff sat in absolute silence, his eyes fixed on documents that would soon turn Bondi's confirmation into a political massacre. Chairman Grassley called the session to order at exactly 2:30 p.m. The committee will come to order. We're here for the final day of confirmation hearings for Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi. Today we'll hear from additional witnesses and committee members who wish to make statement. Bondi took her familiar place at the witness table, her navy blue suit crisp, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her voice steady as she fielded the opening question. Everything was proceeding according to script until Grassley's voice cut through the routine. The chair recognizes Congressman Adam Schiff for questioning. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Schiff stood slowly, deliberately, like a prosecutor approaching a hostile witness. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Miss Bondi, you've spoken extensively about your commitment to the rule of law and your independence from political interference. I'd like to explore that independence in some detail. Bondi nodded confidently. I'd welcome that discussion, Congress. My record speaks for itself. Indeed it does, Schiff replied, opening his portfolio. Let's start with your record regarding the investigation of election interference. Are you familiar with the phrase, Operation Clean Sweep? The color drained from Bondi's face instantly. Her hands, resting on the table, began to tremble almost imperceptibly. Operation Clean Sweep was the code name for a secret investigation she'd buried in Florida, an investigation that could have exposed Russian money flowing through Florida real estate to the Trump Organization. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Congressman, Bondi said, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. Of course you're not, Schiff said with a slight smile. Let me refresh your memory. He pulled out a document and held it up for the camera. This is a confidential memo from your office, dated October 15, 2020, ordering the immediate suspension of all investigations into suspicious real estate transactions involving Russian nationals in South Florida. The memo is signed by you personally. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Republican senators shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Bondi's legal team frantically shuffled through their papers, clearly blindsided. That investigation was suspended due to resource constraints, Bondi stammered. We had to prioritize cases based on available evidence and staff limitations. Schiff nodded sympathetically. Resource constraints. I see. Is that why you fired the 3 FBI liaisons who were working on the case? Because of resource constraints. He pulled out another document. This is the termination paperwork for Special Agents Martinez, Chen and Thompson, the lead investigators on Operation Clean Sweep. All three were fired within 48 hours of your suspension order. All three had discovered connections between Russian shell companies and properties purchased by Trump Organization subsidiaries. The committee room erupted. Reporters frantically typed on their phones. Camera flashes strobed like lightning. Bondi looked like she was about to be sick. "I don't recall the specific details of those personnel decisions," she whispered. "You don't recall," Schiff repeated slowly. "Miss Bondi, these agents had uncovered evidence of $340 million in suspicious Russian real estate purchases, many involving properties that were later sold to Trump associates at significantly inflated prices. You don't recall shutting down an investigation into potential money laundering that could have implicated your political patron?" Bondi's breathing became shallow. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the air conditioning. "I object to the characterization of President Trump as my patron. My decisions were based solely on legal merit." "Legal merit," Schiff said, pulling out a third document. "Is that what you call this phone call transcript from October 12, 2020? 3 days before you shut down Operation Clean Sweep." He began reading from the document. "Donald Trump to Pam Bondi, 11:47 p.m. Quote, Pam, sweetheart. You've got to help me out here. These FBI guys are sniffing around properties that could cause me real problems. I need this Florida thing to go away. You take care of this, and I'll take care of you." Attorney General sounds nice, doesn't it? End quote. The silence that followed was deafening. Every senator, every reporter, every person in that room stared at Bondi as the implications crashed over her like a tsunami. She had taken a direct order from Trump to obstruct a federal investigation, and Schiff had the recorded evidence. "Miss Bondi," Schiff continued relentlessly, "did President Trump promise you the Attorney General nomination in exchange for shutting down a federal money laundering investigation?" Bondi's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. No sound came out. Her face had gone completely white. Her hands were shaking visibly now. I need to consult with my attorneys," she finally managed to whisper. "The American people don't need you to consult with attorneys, Bondi. They need you to answer the question, did you obstruct a federal investigation in exchange for a promise of political advancement?" That's when Bondi broke completely. She tried to stand, perhaps to leave, perhaps to regain some composure, but her legs wouldn't support her. She collapsed back into her chair, hyperventilating, tears streaming down her face. The cameras captured every second of her breakdown. The moment when one of Trump's most loyal allies realized her corruption had finally been exposed with irrefutable evidence. She gasped between sobs. "I need to go." And then she did something that shocked everyone in that room. She stood up, pushed past her legal team, and literally ran from the committee room. The woman who had sent killers to death row, who had prosecuted the most dangerous criminals in Florida, who had been Trump's legal defender through 2 impeachments, fled like a scared child caught in a lie. The hallway cameras caught her stumbling toward the exit, mascara streaming down her cheeks, her perfect political image destroyed forever. Behind her, the committee room descended into chaos. Republican senators demanded to know how Schiff had obtained classified documents. Democrats called for immediate criminal referrals. Reporters rushed toward the exits to file breaking news alerts. But Schiff sat calmly at his table, closing his portfolio with the satisfaction of a prosecutor who had just delivered justice. Within an hour, Bondi Fleas was trending worldwide. The footage of her breakdown and flight from the Senate played on every news channel, every social media platform, every political website on Earth. By evening, she had withdrawn her nomination. By the next morning, the Justice Department announced a criminal investigation into obstruction of justice. By the end of the week, Pam Bondi was facing federal charges that would end her legal career and likely send her to prison. Adam Schiff had done in 73 seconds what the entire Republican establishment couldn't do in decades. He had shown America that even Trump's most loyal allies would eventually face consequences for their corruption. The last image of Bondi that America saw was her fleeing that Senate chamber, destroyed by the truth she thought she had buried forever. Schiff had proven once again that in America, no one, not even the president's chosen prosecutors, is above the law. But what happened in the hours immediately following Bondi's humiliating flight would prove even more devastating than her public breakdown. Within minutes of her escape from the Russell Building, Bondi's phone began exploding with calls from Trump's inner circle. According to leaked recordings that would surface weeks later, the conversations were brutal. "What the fuck just happened in there?" Donald Trump Jr. screamed through the phone as Bondi sat hyperventilating in the back of her black SUV, speeding away from Capitol Hill. "You just destroyed everything. How did you not know Schiff had that phone call?" But Bondi couldn't respond. She was in full panic mode, realizing that her entire life, her legal career, her political future, her freedom, had just evaporated in 73 seconds on live television. The recording of her conversation with Trump that Schiff had read wasn't supposed to exist. It had been made by the NSA as part of routine intelligence gathering, but it was so politically explosive that even the intelligence community had buried it. Someone with incredible access and determination had leaked it to Schiff, and now it was public record. By 4 p.m. that same day, less than 2 hours after her flight, CNN had obtained additional documents that made the situation exponentially worse. Anderson Cooper led his breaking news coverage with a bombshell revelation. "We have exclusive documents showing that Pam Bondi's obstruction of the Russian money laundering investigation may have allowed over $500 million in illegal funds to flow through Florida real estate markets directly into Trump Organization accounts." The documents Cooper displayed showed bank transfer records, shell company formations, and property deeds that painted a picture of systematic corruption spanning 3 years. Bondi hadn't just shut down one investigation, she had systematically dismantled an entire financial crimes unit that was closing in on what prosecutors now called the largest money laundering operation in American political history. But the most damaging revelation came from an unexpected source: the 3 FBI agents Bondi had fired for investigating the Russian connections. Special Agent Maria Martinez, who had led the Operation Clean Sweep team, called an immediate press conference from FBI headquarters. Standing before a wall of American flags, her voice steady with righteous anger, Martinez delivered testimony that would be replayed for years as a masterclass in public service integrity. For 3 years, Special Agents Chen, Thompson and I followed the money trail from Russian oligarchs through dozens of shell companies into Florida real estate, Martinez said, her words cutting through the political noise like a laser through smoke. "We had documented evidence of $340 million in suspicious transactions, all connected to properties later acquired by Trump Organization subsidiaries at prices far above market value. We were weeks away from making arrests when Attorney General Bondi personally ordered us to stop our investigation and destroyed our files." Martinez's voice grew stronger as she continued. "When we protested, citing our oath to uphold the law regardless of political consequences, she told us, and I quote, 'Some investigations are too important to complete.' Then she fired us and had our security clearances revoked to prevent us from taking our evidence to federal authority." The press conference was devastating. 3 decorated FBI agents with impeccable records and no political affiliations were publicly accusing Bondi of obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, and abuse of power. Their credibility was unassailable, their evidence documented, their motives clearly patriotic rather than partisan. By evening, Bondi cover-up was trending globally. Fox News quietly stopped mentioning her name. Even Trump issued a statement saying he was deeply concerned by these allegations. The man who had promised Bondi the Attorney General position was now abandoning her to save himself. Thursday brought devastating news. The Florida Bar Association announced emergency disbarment proceedings against Bondi. The Justice Department opened a criminal investigation into potential conspiracy charges related to the Trump phone call. But the most personally devastating blow came from an unexpected source: her own former staff in Florida. Sarah Chen, the former Deputy Attorney General who had worked under Bondi for 6 years, called a press conference that would forever destroy any remaining sympathy for her former boss. Standing outside the Florida Attorney General's office in Tallahassee, Chen's voice shook with emotion as she revealed the human cost of Bondi's corruption. "Pam Bondi didn't just obstruct one investigation," Chen said, her words heavy with the weight of betrayal and moral outrage. "She created a culture of corruption that infected our entire office. We had evidence of human trafficking networks using the same Russian money laundering channels she protected. We had leads on child exploitation rings connected to these financial crimes. When we tried to pursue these cases, she shut us down,
telling us to focus on winnable cases that don't create political problems. Chen's revelation was staggering. Bondi hadn't just protected financial crimes, she had potentially allowed violent criminal networks to operate freely in Florida, because investigating them might have led back to Trump's financial dealings. Children were being trafficked, Chen continued, tears now streaming down her face. Women were being exploited, families were being destroyed, and Pam Bondi chose to protect her political patron instead of protecting innocent victims. That's not just corruption. It's a betrayal of everything we swore to defend when we became prosecutors. The human cost of Bondi's corruption, personified by Chen's emotional testimony, transformed the story from political scandal to moral outrage. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. A corrupt political operative, who had fled from accountability versus dedicated public servants, who had sacrificed their careers to protect innocent victims. Friday morning brought the news that would end any possibility of Bondi's rehabilitation. The Washington Post, working with a consortium of investigative journalists, published a massive exposé, revealing that Bondi's corruption extended far beyond the Russian money laundering case. Using Freedom of Information Act requests, leaked documents, and testimony from former staff members, the investigation documented a pattern of obstruction and cover-ups spanning her entire tenure as Florida Attorney General. The Post revealed that Bondi had systematically shut down investigation into a pediatric cancer charity fraud that stole $4.2 million from children's families, an elderly abuse scheme that targeted Holocaust survivors in South Florida, a veterans housing fraud that left disabled combat veterans homeless, a pharmaceutical company that knowingly sold contaminated medications to Florida hospitals. In each case, the companies or individuals under investigation had made substantial contributions to Bondi's campaigns or political action committees. In each case, Bondi had personally intervened to halt prosecutions that her own staff recommended pursuing. The pattern was unmistakable, documented, and morally reprehensible, but the Post had obtained internal emails showing that Bondi had systematically destroyed case files to prevent future investigation. On January 15, 2021, 5 days before leaving office, she ordered destruction of over 200 case files, including all evidence related to Operation Clean Sweep. The destruction was criminal obstruction on a massive scale. Saturday brought the inevitable conclusion. Under pressure from legal organizations, facing criminal investigations, and abandoned by political allies, Bondi withdrew from Attorney General consideration and surrendered her law license. The statement was read by her lawyer, because Bondi was too distraught to appear publicly. But protests erupted outside her Tampa law firm, led by victims' families whose cases she had buried. The following Monday brought justice, in its most satisfying form. Federal agents arrested Pam Bondi at her West Chase mansion on charges of obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit money laundering, destruction of evidence, and racketeering. The Perp Walk, broadcast live on every major network, showed the woman who had once been considered for the Supreme Court being led away in handcuffs, her perfect political image replaced by an orange jumpsuit and leg shackles. During her arraignment, prosecutors revealed that Bondi was the central figure in what they called the most sophisticated political corruption scheme in modern American history. The indictment detailed how she had received over $2.3 million in bribes disguised as campaign contributions, speaking fees, and consulting contracts in exchange for systematically obstructing investigations that threatened her political ally. 6 months later, Adam Schiff stood before a packed courthouse, as Pam Bondi was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. In his victim impact statement, Schiff spoke not for himself, but for the countless Americans whose trust Bondi had betrayed. Democracy dies when those sworn to protect justice instead sell it to the highest bidder. Pam Bondi didn't just commit crimes, she poisoned the very concept of equal justice under law. As Bondi was led away to begin her sentence, the investigation she had killed to protect Trump was reopened with full federal resources. Within a year, it would result in the largest financial crimes prosecution in American history, with dozens of arrests and hundreds of millions in recovered stolen funds. The investigation Bondi had killed to protect Trump was reopened within days, leading to the largest money laundering prosecution in American history. And Pam Bondi, who had sold her integrity for a promise of power, learned that some prices are too high to pay. and some secrets too dangerous to keep.